Mm.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Today we're going to have a different type of video. We're going to bring on my buddy John. I like calling him Brother John. Anyways, we're going to be talking about baseball and the midseason report. Anyways, John, how's it going, man?
Thanks for having me on. Pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for being patient with some technical difficulties that I've had today. It's driving me nuts.
No problem. I'm not good at tech either.
All right, so the baseball season has been really interesting. We've had all sorts of news. The All-Star game has moved to Denver. And the other news right after it was the fact that we had pitchers allegedly using this foreign substance. It was called spider tack. And we had pitchers like Garrett Cole and Trevor Bauer allegedly using this substance, which artificially has increased their spin rate over the past year. And now we're starting to see a decrease in the amount of spin, especially on the four-seam fastball. So what's your take on all of these shenanigans going on with spider tack and whatnot?
I would say I'm not really surprised by any of this. When I first looked on a couple years ago, you had the Astros scandal and the much less publicized the Red Sox. They also had the batting scandal where the Red Sox were actually caught using Apple Watches to steal Yankee signs and using in live video. So it wasn't just the Astros that were doing it. And the MLB, if you actually read the 10-page report on the Astros, there was a. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the spider tap. This has something to do with the spider tap. They started cracking down on electronic in-game sign stealing, and the two biggest culprits, one being the Astros and two being the Red Sox. But I think the MLB looks like they want to crack down on cheating or the long ball, and they want to get back to small ball. But since they've already cracked down on electronic sign stealing with the Astros, and then to a much lesser punishment, the Red Sox, where they lost, they didn't want to turn this into pitching duels. So now they're cracking down on pitchers because they don't want pitchers getting the upper hand. And this has been going on for a long time. If you even look at, just from a cultural standpoint, the movie Major League, and there was this old veteran pitcher, Harris, and the other one, Ricky Vaughn. And Harris would talk about, the famous line was, Ricky Vaughn would say, "You put snot on the baseball." And so people would put foreign substances on the baseball to get a better drop on their curveball. And they would put, dirt on the ball to way back in the dead ball era to blend in. So pitchers throughout time always put stuff on the ball, substances to get an edge, whether it's a drop or a spin on the baseball. They would hide tar in their gloves. So I'm not surprised. I think the league is making a concerted effort now that they're cracking down on electronic sign stealing. They're going to crack down on pitchers and maybe make this more of a batting for average, batting for doubles, triples, and singles league. So this is where I think it's going.
Yeah. Just before we get into the other topic we want to get into, just analysis of all the teams. Adding on to what you're saying, the singles, the doubles, the triples, Theo Epstein, the former president of the Cubs, he was talking about how the game needed to change. And that was because all the fans don't like the fact that you're not doing what we did in the 90s, whereas more small ball, where people enjoyed that. With the Joe Torre and the Yankees teams that were doing it really well. And that's the type of baseball that the fans miss. And Spider Tack just created a situation where all these hitters are trying to use launch angle to try to hit home runs rather than making the game exciting. And a lot of people are striking out. That's the other issue with the game right now. But now getting into our main topic, let's look at all of the teams out there. I'll hand it off to you. You want to maybe start out with the AL?
Yeah.
And
So yeah, basically, I just want to say like I would love to do deep dives of all the teams, but Rahul and I we have jobs, and we are also very busy in our personal lives. So we gathered what we could. So like if I missed something about like the middle bullpen or whatnot, I just want to say I apologize. I can't go really in depth on every team. This is not even sports writers are able to do that, and that's their job. Well, whether they do that, or on purpose or not. But anyway, I'll start out with the AL West, and what I did is I took teams with the winning records and looked at who's has a chance to win, and if they're contenders and pretenders in terms of they winning the World Series. So the first team I'm going to dive into is the Los Angeles Angels, and that team's led by none other than Shohei Ohtani. Sorry if I mispronounce a lot of these names. I just read. I don't hear them on TV or whatnot. So he's basically the closest thing we got since Babe Ruth. 33 home runs so far from what I last checked. Pitches 3.49 ERA. He's a really good pitcher. One of the best. He leads the league in slugging, I believe, and home runs. So he is basically the Asian Babe Ruth. And the Angels are 4.5 games out of the wild card spot, the second wild card spot. And they are not just Shohei Ohtani. Jared Walsh is also an all-star, and Mike Trout is an all-star for this team. So they are pretty. This team, if you look at it in terms of what they shine at, this team. They have basically they're second in the league in slugging percentage on a team basis and fifth in the league in batting average. And this team, offensive firepower is unreal. In terms of their fielding, I didn't dig too much on them, but Jared Walsh, he has around 22 RBI home runs and 64 RBIs. He's on pace for 40 home runs this year. And the scary thing about this offense is Mike Trout. I would say over the last 15 or 30 games has only batted about 182 average, and Rendon for the year has been batting 240. So this is a team that's fifth in the league in batting average and second in the league in slugging, and two of their stars haven't been playing too well lately. And for my Nationals, I know Anthony Rendon is a top-tier hitter. He's one of the best third basemen in baseball, in my opinion. And he is one of the most clutch performers I know because he won a World Series with my Nationals. This offense, as scary as it may be, can be significantly better come the end of the season. So they definitely, offensively, they're a contender. Where they're weak is they're 27th in the league in ERA. From a pitching standpoint, they do have Ohtani. I would say they would be a contender if they could maybe make a trade for an ace like a Max Scherzer with that offense. And if they're able to get two aces like Ohtani and Scherzer pitching 4 games, they will be a tough team to beat. But their weakness, mid-season, is their pitching and, next offseason. The next team is the Mariners. They're led by all-star UC Kikuchi. I probably butchered the name. I'm sorry. He has a 3.48 ERA. This team, though, however, is last in the league in batting average, 25th in slugging. Overall, it is 18th in ERA from what I saw. And when I looked at Baseball Reference, didn't have one player on this team batting around 300. So I would say this team, they don't have enough offensive firepower. Looking for, off-season deal, their mid-season deadlines, they're looking for a first base catcher or maybe even an ace. If they're able to get an ace compared with sorry if I butchered his name. What they do shine in is their 9th in fielding percentage and their 20th in errors. When you have a higher number in errors, that's better. So they have very good, I would say not great, but very good fielding. I think I want consider them a contender. I think they need another ace. I think personally, most World Series teams, if you look at, there was Baumgartner, there was the Dodgers with Kershaw, and I forget how to pronounce that guy's name. Do you know Baumgartner? Do you know how to pronounce it, Rahul?
I think it's Bumgardner.
Yeah, Bumgarner and Kershaw. Those were two aces. They won the World Series. The year before that, they had the Nationals with Scherzer and Strasburg. So, I mean, I think this team is. I wouldn't pick them to go very far. I think they need more firepower on offense and an ace. But they have solid defense fundamentals based on what I got. There's two more teams in the AL West. The A's. They're led by Matt Olson. He's 12th in the league in slugging percentage, and they also have Chris Bassett, who is also a all-star pitcher. Right now, based on what I got, they're 11th in the league in ERA, pitching, so they have a very good pitching, I would say top to bottom. 28th in errors, which is very good. That's like 3 or 4, the least amount of errors. Third in fielding percentage, but where they really struggle is they're 13th in slugging and 20th in batting average. So I think in order to contend, they need, in this mid-season, they need to look for another bat to go with Olson. Their pitching is led by Sean Meneas and Chris Bassett. Both Sean Meneas has 3.19 ERA, 3.29 ERA. So they have, I would say, in my opinion, some aces. At least, good enough to be aces. I don't know what your definition of ace, but for this intensive purposes, I look at top 25 pitcher in some category, and if they get hot, they can be unbeatable. So, I mean, but I think they need another, if they're able to get another hitter like Olson to team with, I think they can be a contender, and that's what I would look for at the deadline if I were the A's. And the last team in the AL West, they're my favorite to win the AL West. This team looks good. The Houston Astros. This team is led by Altuve, second baseman, Correa, shortstop, Brantley, outfielder, and they have Presley as a reliever. They are right now they're 4th in the league in slugging, number 1 team in batting average. They're 8th in the league in ERA. Number 1 in fielding percentage, and they're last in errors, which means they have the least amount of errors in the league. Their defense is fantastic. Their pitching is very good, and their offense, they have a lot of firepower. And this team, I think they're on a mission to prove that 2017 wasn't a fluke, wasn't because of cheating. The only thing I would have on them is none of their pitchers are top 25 in ERA or strikeouts. They do have Greinke. I remember talking to some Houston fans I know, and they said, do you have an ace? And they said, we have Greinke. And the other thing is they're very patient at the plate. They're 8th in the league in walks. If there is a team top 10 in walks, I'm going to note that. So I think the A's could be, but I think I missed that. Maybe they're but yeah, Houston's 8th. They're very patient at the plate. Their offense and fielding is the best in the league. I would say if I were the Houston, I would try to get a rental like Scherzer. I just talk about Scherzer a lot because he's a Nationals, I'm a Nationals fan. I don't think the Nationals are going to trade him, but they can get an ace to really. My only concern too is Dusty Baker's known to pitch and tire out his pitchers, and I wonder if he's doing that with Houston. So that's my basic wrap-up of the AL West. Did you want to do the AL Central?
Yeah, I'll do the AL Central. So, obviously, I'm a Cubs fan, as all you guys know. I follow them intensely, but I was really excited to see the Southsiders, the Chicago White Sox, have all these young prospects over the past few years, and now they have a veteran manager, Tony La Russa. And Tony La Russa came out of retirement to manage them. He is a bit old school, so that does rub wrongly on the White Sox players who are Zoomers. The thing about the White Sox, though, they have a great staff, which has led them to first place in the Central. They have, as a surprise, Lance Lynn. He just pitched the other day, and his ERA is slightly under 2. I believe it's 1.99. He has a solid record. He will be going to the All-Star game. They have another young gun pitcher, Carlos Rodon, ERA 2.31, pretty solid. And they have other pitchers as well. Dallas Keuchel, who was a top pitcher for Houston a few years ago. They have Lucas Giolito, which did come from your Nationals, John, if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember.
Yep. And they just have a decent starting rotation. They may want to add maybe another pitcher and take one of their starters, maybe like a Dylan Cease, who came from my Cubbies in the Quintana trade. Maybe put Cease in the bullpen, get a guy like Scherzer if possible. But the Nationals are still in contention right now, from my memory, which John will be talking about later on. And they just have a great staff. Tim Anderson has been selected to the All-Star. So you have Lance Lynn, Carlos Rodon, Liam Hendricks, a reliever. They're all-stars. We have a great staff on the Chicago White Sox. And guess what? They have a comfortable lead right now in the Central, and they're going to get back two of their young stars, Eloy Jimenez, who once again was a Cub, traded to the White Sox. I hate that trade all the time. He's going to come off the injured list. He's going to do some damage. And then they're going to get the other guy, Luis Roberts, who was rated one of the top prospects a couple of years back. So you're going to get these two guys. They're in first place with a comfortable lead. And you have this young staff with this veteran manager who has instilled discipline within these players. I just see a lot of good things right now for the Chicago White Sox. And they may need some pitching help during the postseason. They do have veteran leaders like Dallas Keuchel, like I mentioned, but it should be interesting. And I think I was telling John this. It'd be quite interesting to see maybe a postseason match between Dusty Baker's Astros and Tony La Russa's White Sox. Back in the day, I remember when La Russa was the Cardinals and Dusty Baker was with the Chicago Cubs. La Russa and Baker used to curse out each other all the time. Those Cubs-Cardinals series where all the pitchers were hitting each other. It was crazy games where it was double digits, maybe 10-9, something like that. And they had 7 runs scored in the first few innings. Those were like the good old days I remember from baseball. And it'd be quite interesting to see two veteran managers take them to the ALCS. And the other team in that division that may have a shot at the White Sox are the Cleveland Indians, but they're not the Cleveland Indians of 2016 because of free agency and some trades. They're not as strong, and they did trade some of their top pitchers as well. So yes, they are in contention, but it appears that the White Sox will probably be going to the playoffs this year unless Cleveland pulls off a miracle. And John, do you want to touch base on the other division in the AL? AL East?
Yeah, AL East. I would say some would say it's the toughest division. I would say probably in baseball so far the toughest division would be either the West of the AL or the East. So I'm going to go from basically bottom to top. The first team, the Toronto Blue Jays. If you look at this team is all about this is another offensive firepower. Beyond, they have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's, I would say, performing like the best hitter in baseball. I believe he's leading the league in either slugging and batting average, one of the two. I remember, but he's having an incredible year, and I would say he's the best batter in baseball this year. I don't know, if you were going to include, who's the best batter in baseball over the last 5 years and who would you rather have, maybe it's Mike Trout, but if you had to look at only this year, he's the best batter in baseball. And they also have Marcus Seaman, who's second baseman, all-star. Uh, Viascon Hernandez. Sorry if I butchered the first name. My handwriting's also bad, so that could be a T and not an F. And he's an outfielder. And then they have a shortstop, Bo Bichette. Sorry if I butchered these names. So I mean, you look at this. They have they're second in the league in batting average. They're number one in slugging. They outslug every team. In terms of pitching, they're 12th in ERA. When I looked up their pitching, and I went into top 25 in strikeouts or batting or ERA, I didn't see any Toronto pitchers, but they did sign a guy from the Dodgers a year ago. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but if he can revert back to what he was like with the Dodgers, they can be a dangerous team. But I mean, where they are weak is 25th in fielding percentage and the sixth most errors in the league. I would say midseason they need help in the field. I don't know if it's the outfield or the infield. They have a first base, second base, and shortstop all-star, so I'm assuming a lot of the errors maybe come from outfielding, or maybe their shifts aren't. They need to work on some of that, or maybe their all-stars in the infield are just, I didn't look at their errors or anything, so maybe they need to shore that up. I would say they need help in the field. And they are 22nd in the league in ERA. So I would look, I think they need to shore up their pitching, where it's, bullpen and, another ace. Their offensive firepower, though, is second to none. They have 3 of the top 25 players in batting average, and they have 2 of the top 25 sluggers in the league. So the Blue Jays, their offense is great, but I think they need help in the field. And I would say another ace, and maybe even help in the bullpen. The next one is the Yankees, and I would say in 2020, everyone thought they had a World Series team when they signed Garrett Cole, and that is who one of their all-stars are. The other one is Aaron Judge and Chapman as the reliever. This team is, one of the things I really like about them is they're third in the league in walks. So that means they have the ability to wear pitchers down. They're very smart at the plate. They don't chase balls. But right now they were one of the top batting teams in the league, and some of their players haven't played as well as they were the past years. So they need to step up. They're 17th in the league in batting average, 18th in slugging. So I would say that's a lot of they need, some of those guys who batted really well the previous years need to step up for them to be a contender. In terms of the field, they're 18th in field percentage and 14 most errors. Their pitching, on the other hand, though, they're 10th in the league in ERA, and they have a lot of well-performing pitchers. I forget completely off my top of my head, but in my opinion, in order for them to be a contender in the midseason, they need to get some speed in the lineup. And they're third in the league in walks. They have Aaron Judge. They have some good hitters, but they're 27th in the league in total RBIs. And I think one of the reasons is they don't have speed, and I think that's one of the reasons they also have, they're 14th in errors and they're 18th. They're in the bottom half in fielding percentage. I think they need more speed in their lineup, and that would improve their fielding, and it would also improve their RBI. So I think that's what's really lacking. They have power, they have pitching, but they need to get some speed in there. So that's my thing with the Yankees. The second team, I think they're a contender, is the Tampa Bay Rays. They were in the World Series. They played well. Last year they were just a little bit out, but their catcher they're led by catcher Mike Zeno and shortstop Joey Wendell. Now, when I say led, I'm just talking about their all-stars. But they have Randy Arzuna, who had a big playoff last year. They have pitcher Tyler Gastineau. So they have a lot of great players top to bottom. They have a fantastic bullpen. But in terms of right now, they're 23rd in the league in batting average, 16th in slugging. This shows, the depth of their pitching. They're 7th in the league in team ERA, 6th in strikeouts, and they're 4th in field percentage and 26 in errors. They're very strong on the field, very smart fundamentally. And of course, as I said, Randy Arozarena, he was a big playoff threat last year. And this team can be more dangerous come because pitcher Tyler Gastineau, who is their best pitcher and their ace, he's been injured this year. Ryan Thompson, who he didn't have that great of a year last year, but this year he was pitching 2.38 ERA, and he's been on the injured reserve or the IL. So I think this team could be much more dangerous come towards the end of the, if Gastineau and Thompson and these pitchers can get healthy with their fielding and their batting, I think, steps up a little. I think this can be a dangerous team. They're very deep. They can pitch a lot. They can throw a lot of different pitchers for those long 7-game series. If I were and they're 6th in the league in walks. This is a very smart team. So if I were this team, in terms of, I think they're great top to bottom. As my experience with the Nationals and everything, I always think, to win a World Series, you need 2 aces. So I would, almost every one of these teams, I'm going to say, except for, some teams in the NL East, mid-season, I would be looking for another ace or, to improve that offense, I'd be looking for another bat. And if I had to pick one for the Rays, I would look for another bat. I would make that my priority in a mid-season trade. They have that. They're definitely a contender. Or someone just steps it up. The last team in the AL East, the Boston Red Sox. This team is led by all-star third baseman Rafael Devers, shortstop Xander Bogenthal. They have J.D. Martinez, and then they have right-handed pitcher Nathan Eovaldi and reliever Matt Barnes. This is a very good team. They have their manager back. He was actually the ringleader in the Astros scandal, and then got caught, again with the Red Sox. So I mean, how is he a cheater or not? I don't know per se because I don't know everything. But I mean, he's been caught twice. But this team, in terms of pitching, they are 13th in the league in ERA, 7th in strikeouts. So they have very solid pitching. They're 3rd in the league as a team in batting average and slugging percentage. Where they really hurt is their fielding. They're 26th in fielding percentage, and they have more errors than any other team. In their trade deadline, I would try to address that, get some really good fielders in there. And not only that, they don't have a pitcher in the top 25 in strikeouts or averages. So if they're able to get an ace, maybe they can do that. But, I mean, this team has 3 players in the top 25 in slugging and batting average. So if I had to pick one, though, their offensive firepower should be able to carry them. And so I would try to shore up that fielding, cut down on the errors and the mistakes, and that's what I would look for. But they have the offensive firepower. It's just, can they improve the fielding? So that's my AL East synopsis. Did you want to start on the NL West or the NL Central?
Yeah, I'll start with the NL Central. Once again, my Cubs are in this division. They were doing pretty well up into about maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was talking to my dad, and he said something really interesting. He said once the Cubs got a no-hitter with 3 relievers or a few other relievers and their starting pitcher, they've just gone downhill. It's the weirdest thing that I've seen. They were doing pretty well up until that point. I thought they'd go to the playoff. They're playing like a team that no one would want to play in the playoffs. But now, because of mean reversion, everything is going back to what I thought the Cubs would be this year. So they're basically a dumpster fire, just like I would compare that to ESPN right now and the drama they're dealing with. Now, the top two teams that I consider that have a good shot of going to the playoffs this year, they're the Brewers and, yes, the Cincinnati Reds of all teams. Cincinnati, they have this one right fielder. He was on the Cubs for, I think, 2 months, Nick Castellanos. And he has a batting average about 331, which is solid. Going to the All-Star game, he has 18 home runs, 59 RBIs, pretty legit. The other All-Star that Cincinnati has is left fielder Jesse Winkler. He has 19 home runs and 50 RBIs, so that's pretty good. So they're good on that regards. I believe there are 5 to 6 games over 500. I wouldn't consider them to be a strong suit in terms of going into the playoffs. Their starting pitching isn't the greatest based on what I've seen. They do have Wade Miley, who has 16 games under his belt. He's 7-4 with a 2.80 ERA. They have Tyler Mahle, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's 7-3 with the 3.68 ERA with the 18 games started. So that's pretty good. Now, I don't, like I mentioned before, they don't have the depth to go deep in the playoffs. So they could come in as a wild card, but I don't see them going too far. Now, the other team that is at the top of the division and will probably be in the playoff hunt as usual are the Milwaukee Brewers. I find this really interesting. They're 53-39, 14 games above 500. And the thing is, they're doing it without a few of their studs. And some of their studs that I consider are Lorenzo Cain and Christian Yelich. And it's unreal if you look at Yelich. His average is 241, which is okay. But this guy, if you guys remember, he was an MVP. And he's no longer doing what he used to do. I believe he has back problems, so that could be it. Lorenzo Cain, he's batting 223. And despite him doing that, the Brewers are still doing great. Those two guys carried the team the past few years, and that's why they went into the playoffs. And, John, you remember the Brewers almost beat your Nationals, and the Nationals, with the help of Soto, they got into the next round, and then eventually they won the World Series later that fall.
Yep.
And the way that the Brewers are doing it right now, I'm still skeptical about their record right now, 14 games over 500. Their pitching is the reason why they're in first place. There's this one individual, Freddie Peralta. He's taking the spot over Brandon Woodruff, who was first labeled an All-Star. But going back to Freddie Peralta, he's 7-3 with a 2.39 ERA, 18 games under his belt. Brandon Woodruff, like I mentioned, who should have been an All-Star, but because of timing with when he pitched, he can't make it. But anyways, he's 7-4 with the 2.06 ERA. And the other All-Star is Corbin Burns, 4-4 with a 2.36 ERA. They have a strong pitching staff, really, really good. And the guy who closes it, like I was mentioning earlier, Josh Hader. Hader, it's unreal. His ERA is 1.49, which is pretty good. He is 3-2. But regardless, if the Brewers are to go into the playoffs, they're going to need another bat. And I know the Cubs have some batters that they're going to trade, probably like a Chris Bryant or a Javier Baez, maybe even an Anthony Rizzo, but they're not going to do it within their division unless they get some amazing prospects, which the Brewers do have, by the way. But I don't see that happening. So the Brewers need some more help before they could do some major damage. I don't consider them going to the World Series unless they make some decent changes. Now, John, do you want to look at the NL East?
Sure, I'll go to the NL East. I'm going to start with the two. They're still in the race, so I'm going to cover them. But, I mean, one of them was devastated by injuries, and the other I just don't think. So I'm going to start with the Phillies. They're led by catcher JT Realmuto. Sorry, I wrote this down, so my handwriting's horrible. And pitcher Zach Wheeler. And Zach Wheeler's having a really great season so far. His ERA, I think, is in the twos. I forget. I want to say 2.44, but I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. In terms of overall team, they're 14th in slugging percentage and batting average, 19th in ERA, 13th in strikeouts, and they're 16 in field percentage and 17 in error. So in terms of their overall fielding, they're middle of pack below. Overall pitching, but Zach Wheeler's pitching like an ace. But their team pitching, if you count the bullpen and whatnot, and their batting is still middle of the fielder. They do have two pitchers in the top 25 in strikeouts and batting average. Bryce Harper is 25th in slugging. He's not really that good of an average hitter, but he's a pretty good slugger. So I would say if the Phillies do make the playoffs, there is a chance they can go far just because they have Zach Wheeler. I forget the other guy's name, but they have two really good pitchers. And if you get two pitchers that are hot, all you have to do is win four. And that's, and they're pitching in four. So, I mean, they could. I don't think, though, they're going to make the playoffs. I just don't think they have the offensive firepower to do so. They are, in terms of midseason trade, I don't think any midseason trade would make them a contender unless they can get an ace. And then if you got three, really, then you're a contender. But I don't think I don't know if they have really they'd have to part with some of the really good prospects. I don't know how good their farm system is. But, I mean, if I was GM, I would just look for good deals, players that can be around for a while, or even some really good prospects. If I were the Phillies, I don't think they're going to contend, but you never know. The next one's the Braves. Statistically, they're not out of it, but the injury to Ronald Acuna Jr., he's out for the season. I think that's going to be a big blow. Freddie Freeman and All-Star Ozzie Albies, second baseman, they're going to have to carry the load. Now, the good thing is they are ninth in the league in walks, which shows, very patient at the plate. They can wear down pitchers. And I always think, if you can get a great pitcher, out after 4 or 5 innings, that gives you a chance to win. In terms of batting, though, they're 15th in batting average, but they're 7th in slugging. But I don't expect those to continue, the top 10 in slugging with Acuna Jr. out. They're pitching, they're 16th in ERA and strikeouts. So they don't have too much intimidating pitching, and I don't see an all-star ace on this squad. They're 24th in errors and 6th in field. So they are a very good defensive team. I think with Acuna, they are a contender, but they lost him. So I think this team could still win. It's still a very solid team, very smart team. But I don't see them contending for the World Series, but it's possible they take the division, even without Acuna. This is a very well-rounded team. You have to remember, they were a couple of games away from the World Series. So this is still a good team. I just don't think without Acuna they can contend. Me personally, I think they need to get some aces in the starting pitching to contend. I'm a complete pitching guy. I would. So I mean, if you're looking at my analysis, it's all about your starting pitching. So speaking of great starting pitching. I want to talk about my Nationals last, just because that's my favorite topic. Save the best for last. So I'm going to go with the Mets, and this team is very dangerous. They're the division winners, and the reason I say they're the most dangerous is they have the best starting pitching. And I think first is led by Jacob deGrom, who has a sub-1 ERA. I think it's .69. If you have this team in the wild card, I think you're toast. Jacob deGrom, unless you better pray Jacob deGrom is like sort of Justin Verlander in the playoffs, because he's the best pitcher in baseball, hands down. And I don't, if they end up not winning the division and they're in the wild card, I don't think any, unless it's the Nationals with Strasburg, who's probably the best clutch pitcher in the game, I don't think any NL team will beat them in the one-game wild card. And not only that, they have Taijuan Walker, who's also, I think, and if you look at ERA, 3 of the top 25 ERA pitchers, meaning lowest ERA, are all in the Mets. Taijuan Walker is number 11, and Marcus Stroman is 16. And this team has plenty of firepower. Even though their offenses are struggling, Pete Alonso, he led the league in home runs. I don't think it was last year, but the year before with around 51. And if Francisco Lindor reverts back to his old form, this team is going to be very dangerous because their starting pitching is very excellent. They're 22 in the league in errors, 15th in field percentage. Now, I don't know how great their defense is, because I think their pitching so good that their errors and field percentage could be a little inflated, but they're 3rd in the league in ERA, 14th in strikeouts. Where they really hurt right now is batting, 28th in slugging, 23rd in batting average. Now, Pete Alonso did lead the league in home runs, Francisco Lindor, so it is possible that, but I would say if they can get a midseason trade for a big bat in the lineup to pair with Alonso, and Lindor works for, I think this team can be very dangerous. Now, I think if any team, if I was a Dodgers or a Padres fan, or who's the other team? There's another team in the AL West. They better pray they don't see the Mets early in the 5-game series, because that means Jacob deGrom is pitching 2 of those games, and you're going to lose those 2, and they have 2 other really good pitchers, and all I have to do is win 1 of the 3. So I don't care what team it is, Dodgers or whatnot, you don't want to see this team early. And that was like the Nationals. The Dodgers had a better all-around team the year they lost to the Nationals in the World Series, but the reality is we had Scherzer and Strasburg pitching. All we had to do was win 3 out of those 4. Scherzer only actually pitched 1 game, and we took the series because our starting pitching was way better. So this is a very dangerous team, and I would not overlook them.
Sorry to interrupt, John.
No problem.
You're talking about how strong the Mets rotation could be. They could have Noah Syndergaard come back from Tommy John in September. So just add in another gun like that, the Mets could be dangerous.
Yeah, so, and as you know, I'm partial to starting pitching. I saw it with my own eyes. Strasburg and Scherzer dismantled 2 super teams by themselves. So you have some great pitchers. You can dismantle super teams. And then I'm going to go to my Nationals. They're led by one of my favorite players, Trey Turner, who I think he's the best shortstop in baseball. He's batting .319 this year. He's having a monster year. Kyle Schwarber, who's having an incredible, I would say 2 months really, but he's really hitting home runs and slugging. Juan Soto, and of course, my favorite pitcher, Max Scherzer. Right now, they're 11th in slugging and 6th in batting average. They're batting really well. A lot of the players, Josh Harrison, he's our second baseman. He's having a good year. Kyle Schwarber's having an excellent year. His average isn't that great, but his slugging, as you know, he was with the Cubs. His average, he needs to improve on average, but his slugging's really great. They moved him to the number 1. Trey Turner's having a fantastic year. just top down the line. And Soto's he's not even having as good of a year as he normally is. So if he goes back to old form, this could be a very dangerous lineup in terms of the average. So Soto, and then in terms of pitching, they're 15th in ERA and 21st in strikeouts. So their pitching hasn't been, but Scherzer's having a great year. He has like a 2.4 ERA. Corbin started out very poorly, but the last couple of weeks he's been pitching well. He has one of the best sliders in baseball. I'd like to see him develop a third pitch, but if he gets ahead of you, he's really good, and he's been improving the last couple of weeks. And Steven Strasburg hasn't been pitching, and this is the thing: if Steven Strasburg is able to get back, he's the best playoff pitcher in baseball. I think that's even hands down. He has the lowest playoff ERA among career ERA among active pitchers. You know, he shut out the Cubs at Wrigley. He single-handedly dismantled the Astros and turned around. We were down 3-2, and he single-handedly dismantled that super team Astros and enabled us to win the World Series. So in terms of the clutch, he's like Tom Brady in the playoffs. So if the stars align for the Nationals, meaning Scherzer stays healthy, Strasburg gets back to healthy form, they could be a very, and Schwarber keeps playing the way he plays, and Soto reverts back to his normal form, and Turner and Harrison, they're having good years. Josh Bell is another guy. He was an all-star in 2019. He had a very slow start. The last couple of weeks, he's really picked it up now. So if he reverts back to all-star form, these Nationals can be very dangerous. We have two of the top 25 in slugging. You have to remember, Trey Turner is in the top 25 in the league in slugging. He's also the fastest guy in baseball. So once he gets on base, he is very dangerous. And if Max Scherzer, we have an ace. So, this Nationals team, there is a lot of ifs, but they're not unrealistic ifs, and they can be very dangerous. The Mets and the Nationals, I would say, are two very dangerous teams out of the NL East. And I would not want, if I were, I think the Dodgers are the favorite. You're going to go into them, Dodgers or Padres, but I would not want to face one of these two teams in a 5-game series at all. So that's my synopsis of the NL East. The favorite to win, I would say, is the Mets, but we'll see.
Alrighty, I'm going to do the last division, the NL West. And this is the division that I think is one of the strongest in baseball. And I'm going to start out with San Diego, who's in the third spot in that division. They have some decent pitching. Some are injured. And Yu Darvish is going to go on the DL. I believe he has a bad back. But this year he's 7-3 with the 3.09 ERA. And there is Blake Snell. Surprisingly, he is 3 for 3 with an ERA close to 5. That is one big surprise that I have. And he had some stomach issues, so he's going to be going on the DL. In terms of hitting, they have some nice studs on this team, including Fernando Tatis Jr. And for those that didn't know, the Chicago White Sox at one point had him in this farm system. Just imagine if he were their shortstop. That team would be unbelievable. They'd be the top team to win. Anyways, Tatis Jr. has 28 home runs, pretty good. 60 RBIs, pretty good. 287 average. You have Manny Machado. He has 15 home runs, 16 ribbies, pretty good as well. His average not so hot at 268. And they have some other guys as well. They have Eric Hosner. He signed a long-term deal a while back. He's only hitting 263, so that isn't as what he was advertised to do. And I believe if the Padres add one more pitcher, some way, shape, or form, this team could be deadly in the playoffs. Once again, you're not dealing with 162 games. You're dealing with only, 5 games in the first round, 7 games afterwards? this team should be definitely watched out, or people should definitely watch out for this team. Now, the Dodgers, I find quite interesting team as well. They have multiple studs on their team. They have Julio Urias, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He's been doing pretty well. I believe he has 11 wins. They have future Hall of Famer Clayton Kershaw, doing pretty well. He has a 9-7 record with a 3.39 ERA. If he had more runs, he'd probably have more wins. Walker Buehler, who right now, based on his ERA, would be the top guy on the staff. He's 9-1 with a 2.36 ERA. He's going to the All-Star game. The other All-Star, I believe, is Justin Turner on the opposite side, third baseman. But going back to their pitching, they have Trevor Bauer. Trevor Bauer has run into some trouble. Once again, innocent until proven guilty, but it seems that the Dodgers right now are acting like he's guilty until proven innocent. We'll see in the coming days and weeks what's going on with it. I do believe that Trevor Bauer is not well liked in baseball and on the team, so who knows? Could it be a way to get them out of the contract? Perhaps. Who knows? The other guy who came off of the injured list was David Price. He's 4-0, so that's pretty good. So I would consider the Dodgers, even though they don't have Trevor Bauer. You have to remember Trevor Bauer was accused of cheating, so that could be an issue with the team. But if they have one more pitcher, Dodgers could be deadly once again. I wouldn't be surprised if they go deep into the playoffs. Now, the last team I wanted to look at is San Francisco, who is actually leading the division. I'm quite surprised that Farhan Zaidi, I believe he's the president of the team, or he's upper management. He was recruited by, he was once with the Dodgers, and he left to San Francisco. And it's unbelievable. The Giants struggled for a few years. Bochy, if I'm pronouncing his name wrong, Bruce Bochy, I believe. So the last few years under him, they weren't doing so hot. And now with new leadership, it seems that San Francisco is pulling off some interesting moves. So I believe last year they signed this one guy from the Dodgers. His name is Alex Wood. And this year he's 8-3 with a 3.67 ERA. He was great a few years ago, from my memory. And the fact is that he has ERA in the threes. Pretty good for the team. They have a few all-stars. Some guys that people have not heard of. Kevin Guzman, 8-3 with a 1.73 ERA. That's fantastic. 18 games. Anthony DeScalfani, he's 10-3 with a 2.68 ERA. Fantastic. Now, here's my skepticism for San Francisco. They have pitchers that have just come out of nowhere. And the fact is, will these pitchers be able to continue their success? I don't think so. They may be legit, they may be solid, but at this level, Kevin Guzman, for instance, I don't think he's going to have a 1.73 ERA throughout the year. Anthony DeScalfani, I don't think he's going to have a 2.68 ERA for the rest of the year. That's why I still am more in favor of the Dodgers winning the division with or without Trevor Bauer. On the offensive end, they do have some decent hitters. They have Buster Posey. They have Brandon Crawford hitting 2.89 average. So this team has exceeded expectations of many individuals, and they should get into the playoffs, barring some sort of major collapse. But once again, I believe the Dodgers still have the strongest roster out there. Now, these are all the 6 divisions. And before we end, I wanted to get John's take. Who do you think is going to be going to the World Series from both leagues? Just looking at what you're researching and what I've looked at, and also you following the game. What do you think?
I would say that's very tough because I think that top to bottom, I would say the Dodgers are the best team in the NL, and I would say they're the favorite. But it comes with a caveat, and that caveat is let's say the Nationals get Strasburg back and healthy. Scherzer's the way it is. Just like when my Nationals beat them, if they get the Dodgers in a 5-game series, I don't think the Dodgers get past that. And I think the same thing with the Mets. If their pitching stays healthy, and as you said, the other guy gets back, I think in a 5-game series, I don't think the Dodgers get past the Mets either. So I would say it all depends on who they get in that 5-game series. I think the Dodgers, if they met the Mets in a 7-game series, I think they could win. Jacob deGrom would probably be an automatic 2 wins. But I think the Dodgers would be able to pull it off in, full 6 or 7 because they have a lot of firepower. But I don't have confidence that they could do it in a 5-game series. So I think if the Dodgers meet, and let's say the Nationals get on fire and they meet either the Nationals or the Mets in the 5-game, the Brewers have, from what you said, a lot of great pitching. So I think it's possible the Brewers walk out if the Dodgers or the Padres walk out. I would say that's who I would look at. But, I mean, if the Dodgers are able to avoid the Mets or the Nats in round 1, I think they're going to walk out. If not, it's going to be probably the Brewers or the Padres walking out. So that's my pick for the NL. What do you think for the NL if you had the picks?
So logically speaking, the Dodgers, but I'm looking at the Mets, and this is a wild card situation. You're talking about Lindor. Lindor's not having a great season thus far. He has improved his batting average to 227, I believe. If Lindor picks up and then they get Syndergaard, if he is able to pitch the way he has in a dominant form, and you have deGrom, like you mentioned, it just takes 2 solid pitchers and maybe a third pitcher as well. You could do damage in the playoffs. And some people may think it's crazy, but if Syndergaard, like I said, pitches well, I wouldn't be surprised at the Mets being in the World Series. Now, if they can't get Syndergaard going, I'd say the Dodgers. And then we'll have to see the AL. AL is pretty interesting.
Yeah, the AL is definitely interesting. So I was going to say, so far, we have the NL. We have, a couple of scenarios for the NL. Would you agree? Like, who could win?
Say that again?
We have, like, more than one scenario of who could win.
Oh, yeah.
The NL. So, all right, I'll remember who I picked, and you can remember. And do you want to start off with the AL, or should I start off with the AL, like mine?
Yeah, you could start off.
So, all right, I would say with the AL, I think it's very, very interesting. I think the White Sox are going to take the Central. And if you refresh my memory, I know they have 1 ace. Do they have 2 aces on their squad?
Well, here's the thing. Lance Lynn has been okay the past few years, and now all of a sudden he's a top pitcher for the White Sox, ERA under 2. And they used to have Lucas Giolito. He used to be their ace. Now his ERA is in the 4s. And they have Dallas Keuchel, who used to be on the Astros. And yeah, so he has potential of doing well in the playoffs. And there's Carlos Rodon. So they do have some decent pitchers. Rodon and Lynn are the 2 top pitchers as of right now, though. ERA in the 2s. or actually 1.99 for Lance Lynn.
Yeah, I would say right now I would go with. Part of me wants to take the Rays because top to bottom, I think they're the most well-rounded team. Houston Astros, they have the best fielding, best batting, and they have good pitching, but they don't really have uh, really an ace. They do have Greinke. If Greinke's able to revert back to his old form, but I personally think you need two, maybe. I think that's why the Dodgers were able to beat the Rays. They had Kershaw and another, I want to say Baumgartner, two aces. But I mean, the Red Sox, I don't think they have the fielding to get too far. I think Houston, if they meet, I think Houston will take full advantage of. Now they do, their manager, even though he was caught cheating twice. I mean, he's won a World Series. He is a good manager, and since he's come back, the Red Sox have really improved. So, but I would pick. I think the Rays are the most well-rounded, and if Gautsenal is able to come back, he's an ace. They have I would go with the Rays. I think the Rays would take the AL. I think they take the Red Sox if they meet. I think the Houston will be a very tough one. I think that goes to 7 just like last year. But the Rays have a lot of pitching depth, and they have Gatsenow, an ace. And the White Sox they're the sort of dark horse, but I would say they may be a year or two away in experience. They have a lot of good offensive players like Abreu and Tim Raines.
Tim Anderson.
Yeah, Anderson, sorry.
Tim Raines, Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Tim Anderson, sorry, the shortstop. I know who he is. So, I mean, I would go with the Rays coming out of the AL.
Yeah. The way that I see it is, you know the scandal with Spider Tack? Glass now, like you're talking about, the ace of the staff, he was complaining that because of getting rid of these foreign substances, this led to an injury or his partially torn, I think it's a UCL, if I remember correctly. And if he can't pitch the way he has in the past, because you have to make adjustments, then I see it hard for the Tampa Bay Rays to go to the World Series. Now, the thing that I'm looking at all the AL teams, and I'm looking at Houston. Houston seems to be the most well-rounded team. Now, that being said, they don't seem to have the ace or the two aces that you need to win the whole thing. Yeah, they have Greinke. He's doing okay, 8-3 with the 3.59 ERA. That's good. But if they get maybe a Verlander, there are talks that Verlander could come back this year. If Verlander could come back, I could see Houston being the top team to win the World Series or go to the World Series from the AL side. And Dusty Baker has done a good job in trying to make the team focus and not looking at the distractions from a few years ago. He's good at that. And there are criticisms of Dusty Baker. You've seen it in Washington. I've seen it in Chicago. He's overworked the pitchers. For the Cubs, it was Pryor and Wood. And you always say that he probably overworked Scherzer, if I'm correct.
Yeah, it's just my, there's never any real complaints of it, but I remember under Dusty Baker, come playoff time, Scherzer just wasn't his normal self, and he was always pitching like in the 5-game. He wasn't coming off on game number 1, so I wonder if he overworked him during the regular season. So it's just a suspicion of mine, but not, don't go quoting me on that if you're listening.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at all of this, and I'm thinking to myself, if Houston gets Verlander back, they'll probably win it all, in my opinion. The team that could give them difficulty, they are the White Sox, in my opinion. And the White Sox have a legit starting lineup. And the thing is, Tim Anderson, he's an all-star. He has a batting average close to 312. And he sets the tone. If he gets on base, and that will relax the whole team, it'll relax the whole pitching staff, and this will be good for the team. In my opinion, a team that has a great leadoff batter, they set the tone, they set the agenda, they make it much easier for the rest of the teammates to do a better job. And I see that with Anderson, because I saw it with the Cubs with Dexter Fowler. I saw it with the Florida Marlins in 2003, Juan Pierre. And your team, they had Trey Turner. He set the tone, fast guy, able to steal bases. And I see that with the White Sox. So, but it would be interesting, a White Sox and a Houston Astros, ALCS, two old managers or two veteran managers who've got into fights. I remember the Cubs and Cardinals. Those are some good games, like I told you. But yeah, I see either the Astros or the White Sox. Should be interesting.
Yeah, it will be interesting. The AL, I'm not too sure. The Rays have the most depth, but yeah, the best players, I would say, the White Sox and the Astros are better. The Astros definitely have the best offense, I would say, in terms of, and their fielding is fantastic. So basically, I'm looking at, if it's the Rays and the Dodgers, I would say the Dodgers would take it again. I think that the Dodgers, with their full pitching staff, all their starters ready, I think they will beat anyone in the NL, whereas the White Sox, the Astros, or Red Sox. But the caveat is if they get the Nationals or the, what's that other team? Mets early. I don't think they walk out of that 5-game series. So I would go with the Brewers just because I'm partial to pitching. They have an ace, and I would say the Padres would probably walk out of there. They have some good pitchers.
Yeah, they have good pitchers, but it's injuries.
It's injuries. So
yeah, I don't think they have Clevenger pitching right now. I think he's injured.
And the only reason I say the Mets don't walk out is because right now I'm just going with the offense they have now. I don't think that will carry them in a 7-game series. Their offense is not performing well. So I would say if the Dodgers don't walk out, I would go with I would say the Astros or Rays or White Sox. But if the Dodgers are in the World Series, now if the Nationals have that dark horse, they are a dark horse. If they're able to get Strasburg returned and they're batting, they could do it. But right now, that's what they are. They're a dark horse.
All right. So, final choice. We should do a podcast before the World Series. Who's going to be in the World Series?
If I had to do final choice, I would go. I think the wild card. The final choice, I would go. The safe pick's the Astros, but my gut's the Dodgers. I'm go with the Dodgers.
What about AL?
Final choice. Go with probably. Part of me wants to pick the Red Sox. I'll be honest, just because their manager's good. And they're very and the Fenway Park. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say the Red Sox. I know that sounds strange, but they have a lot of offensive firepower. They still have an ace, and they're still there. So I would go Red Sox or Astros, but I'm going to go with. I guess I'll go. I would say the Astros are the favorite, but I'm going to go. I would say Red Sox.
Okay. I'm going to go Dodgers, and then I'm going to pick the White Sox. I know it sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But just looking at it, I think La Russa will pull some sort of magic. I don't
Actually,
think they'll win.
I'd change it. You're right. I would go with the White Sox.
Oh, so it's both of us are going to say the White Sox.
Because,
Okay.
you are right. The leadoff hitter, I think the White Sox have a great leadoff hitter, and they have some aces. They have a former National. And I still tell my friends, I'm like, that still wasn't a bad trade for the Nationals because Adam Eaton, we wouldn't have won the World Series. So, we basically traded an all-star, but in return, a World Series win. So,
Yeah.
but, I mean, yeah, I think I would go with the. I just have Houston has the best, I guess, top to bottom team, but
They don't have
you
an
don't have
ace.
two aces. I have a hard time picking against you, and the Red Sox don't have the ace, and the White Sox have some
The
good.
thing is, not the White Sox. The Red Sox are getting Chris Sale back. He's going to go on a minor league rehab assignment. So I think he's going to be back probably by September 1st. Yeah. So what you originally said, if they get Chris Sale, and they get Chris Sale a few years ago, who knows? Your original pick may have been right.
Yeah. Well, since you picked the White Sox, I'm gonna go with the Red Sox. I'll go with the Red Sox.
Okay, you're gonna change. Okay.
Yeah, I'll go with the Red Sox. We'll see what's
And I'm not a White Sox fan.
Yeah.
But I will cheer for them. It
So,
would be good to see a Chicago team in there.
yeah. So I mean, don't get me wrong. If Pete Alonso and whatever for the Mets, if they start batting, they're going to be a very tough team to beat. Brutally tough.
Oh yeah, for sure. They're the dark horse. I would not be surprised if they get in, if it's not the Dodgers.
Yeah, so would I.
Assuming that Syndergaard though has to be doing well.
Yeah. And the other thing is, one of the reasons it's tough is we're not able to do really a deep dive on all these teams. So don't hold us too much because, as you know, both of us are accountants by trade. We're detail guys, so
Yeah.
that's why it takes us a long time to think.
You realize that, John, there's no excuses once you put yourself out there.
Yeah, that's true. So.
But we'll see in the next few months before the World Series. We'll definitely do a podcast.
All right, cool. So.
All right, man. And you plan on starting a sports card channel soon?
Well, I don't know about sports cards, but sports.
Sports channel. Okay, that's good.
In general, so hopefully it'll be next month after my wedding and whatnot. So.
Yep. Can't wait for that, man.
Yep. All right.
All right, man. Thanks for coming on again, man.
You too. All right.
All right, bye.